Okay, this is the next episode in Not a Victim, a Survivor, Life Beyond Domestic Violence and Rape. It's my book and it's available on Amazon in ebook form and also in paperback. And you can buy it on Amazon. It's the first book in my series, Life Beyond Silence. And I guess I was hoping when I did this podcast that it would give me a avenue in which I could elaborate on some parts of the book and that listeners could hear from my own perspective on things, hear from me directly, I guess you would say. And you're perfectly um, welcome to send comments or questions if you want to. I'll try to do my best in answering those. But let's get started. Hold on just a second. Okay, so let's get going on the episode. So, where I left off was after my son's birth, how Phil had decided to get off the road. He finally found a job locally driving a produce delivery truck, and although the pay wasn't that good, we still managed to make it. Whenever I was able to go back to nursing, um, I went as a medical assistant for a doctor in a pain control clinic. I worked there for a while before switching to an auditing company. I could always get a job in nursing. However, I knew it would never be like the position I held prior to going to Germany. I couldn't see myself ever being happy with a lower position than the one I had at the hospital until the right one came along. I would just try to do something else. Besides, the auditing job was kind of fun and it was different. I could basically pick my own hours, which worked really well for a mother with 4 small children. I guess you could say things finally had worked out for me. Although we were constantly struggling to pay bills, we always seemed to stay above water. We did, however, manage to have our shared disagreements on one thing or another, but we were still pretty happy. At least that's what I thought. No, not everything was a pot of gold over the rainbow, but for the most part, we were sharing a lot of good moments together, like I said, or at least so I thought. Making plans for a future. We both wanted to grow old with each other, buy a house, and just live an average, comfortable lifestyle. Don't get me wrong, we had our bad times too. Every now and then, Phil would have one too many beers on the weekend and get depressed at the fact that we weren't who we used to be. All those good times we had in Germany were long gone. Now it was just us, no crowds, no parties, nothing, just bills, kids, and work. Phil had somewhat of a hard time dealing with the fact that he was once the king of the Strauss, which means street in German. And now he was just an ordinary man, busting his butt to make a buck to keep his family afloat. I, on the other hand, had been there before, and it wasn't so hard for me. After all, I looked at Germany as a chance of a lifetime, an experience that I would never forget, but that I also never expected to last. So now that was gone. I just remembered it for what it was and put it behind me. Phil, on the other hand, had gone almost straight into the army from high school and had never been out on his own, not to mention a wife and 4 kids. I kind of felt sorry for him. After all, he had a lot of responsibility dumped on him at once, and I wasn't sure what to say to make him feel better. I do remember when I wrote this, and I do remember feeling like Phil was 5 years younger than me, and he had been this whole stick of a persona out on the street. He had friends, girlfriends, people that made him feel like a king, and here he was in a small town. I mean, we lived in Kentucky in a fairly decent town, um, but or we did live in a decent town, should I say. But we weren't like in my small town where I was born, which is where I had gone back to after coming back from Germany. We had moved into a bigger town, so there was more opportunity for me and for him. And plus, it was far enough away from my family. There were opportunities to be had for him and for me. But I just don't think it was what he thought it was going to be. And I think even though he loved his son dearly, I think having a lot of bills and coming home after work and being a father was a lot all at once. And to me, it was just normal. They were my children, and to me, it was struggling to pay bills was pretty normal for me. So I was just okay with it, and I could see that he was desperately wanting more. I tried telling him life is what you make it, and it's not always easy. Sometimes you just have to accept what you're handed and make the most of it. No, I'm not saying settle for what life hands you and don't strive to have more. Just don't run down what you do have. Things could be worse. I guess you could say at the moment I was kind of an optimist, not a pessimist. Although I've had a lot of bad things happen to me, I've always managed to get up, lift my head up, and go on. After all, I'm a survivor, not a victim. At the end of the day, my kids count on me to hold everything together. I haven't done that good of a job, I'll admit that, but I've tried. I keep pushing through, and I can honestly say at this very moment, that's just what I'm doing. I just continue to pick myself up and take a deep breath and push through. Even if I never see the upper class as far as monetary gain, in my heart it doesn't always matter, or it doesn't matter. Lower, middle, upper, whatever you want to list me in, I'm me. I've survived. It's an accomplishment that I've managed to stay above water and raise 4 beautiful, healthy children and live through what life has dealt me. Simply put, that's something that I can always be proud of. Even if I'm not proud of the choices that I've made, I'm thrilled with the fact that I had 4 children that were healthy, that are beautiful. They're all grown now, and they all have lives. And I think it's more like the circle of life. You you have children. You live your own childhood, and then you have children, and no matter what choices you make in life, those children mean the world to you. And all you can do is push through, try to make it. And you can only do what you can do. And I've seen people with less than me have happy, loving, caring homes. And I've seen people that had more than me that had loving, caring homes. But I've also seen people that had more than me that were caught up in drugs or got divorces or whatever. But I've seen them lose a lot. And I've lost a lot. And I've been through a lot. But I'm happy that I had my kids. I love all of them equally. I really do. I can honestly say when you're a mother, no matter how many kids you have, 1, 2, 10, even if you had 10 children, you would love them all the same, but they would all be different children. They all have their own aspirations. They all have their own lives. They all grow into different people, but you love them. And that's really, I guess, the shining moment of life. And I'm sure there are people that don't have children that live happy lives, and that's fine. But even though I was always searching for happiness and the picket fence and things like that, I'm okay with the fact that at least I did have 4 beautiful children, and at least they are out on their own and doing their best in life. And I'm their mother. But I do think it's kind of like the circle of life that you grow up, you grow older, you have children, and at my age, it's kind of like the circles come full around. I'm getting older, my life is coming to an end, and my kids are okay, and I'm okay. I feel like I've lived a good life. It's been plenty of ups and downs, and there's been plenty of mistakes I've made and plenty of regrets, but I'm okay. And I feel like I've been through a lot of pain and a lot of, like I said, regrets, but I feel like I'm still here. I'm still a survivor. I still will wake up every morning and I still will try to make the best of every day. Okay, so let's continue. My next part, I guess I want to kind of give you an idea about before we get started. It's just when you think you have everything under control and you'll be okay, you find out maybe you've been living a lie. I really don't know why or how it happened. I don't think I'll ever know the whole story or the truth of the matter. But it was like that old phrase, all good things sooner or later come to an end. I can honestly say I wasn't prepared for what happened to me in the fall of 1992. However, I'm getting way ahead of myself. I really should start at the beginning. First of all, Phil and I had lived a fantasy existence in Germany. We had an average amount of money, followed by a lot of friends and a comfortable home. However, upon arrival back in the States, we found that civilian life was going to be much more of a struggle than we had pictured. I was pregnant, Phil was having some trouble finding work, and just getting into the swing of things was different. Overall, I think our first year back was a real strain. After all, he was a family man now, and he had to find a job to support us. I, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves, and we started fighting over everything. I ballooned up with my pregnancy to the largest I've ever been in my life, and I worried about our finances constantly. At the start of 1991, Desert Storm came, and I remember Phil and I were glued to the news nightly. I also remember Phil's statement that he wasn't in any danger of being reactivated. After all, we had a new baby. Due, the, Due to the huge amount of military on hand, he didn't think he would be reactivated. But it was only a few days later that we received the notice to report for deployment, and although his mother and I were extremely upset and worried, Phil, on the other hand, was actually quite ecstatic. He said this is what he had always dreamed of. Not to be a hero, but he was a trained medic, and he thought he could be an asset to any unit that put him in. This was also his chance to do what he was trained to in the military for, and he wanted to go. After all, he was a soldier. The confrontation, however, in Iraq didn't last long. He was only gone approximately 3 months before returning home, and even then he said he practically begged to stay in. I can honestly say I'm absolutely certain he did. After all, the military was like a safe haven for him, away from the world that most people live in. I knew he loved us, but he didn't like his job, which consisted of delivering produce to stores and restaurants. He didn't like the fact that we were constantly struggling to make it, and it seemed as though we had nothing. He basically lived paycheck, or we basically lived paycheck to paycheck, just keeping our heads above water. I, on the other hand, am an optimist, and although I worried about our future and our finances, I also counted our blessings. We had 4 beautiful, healthy children and a comfortable home. Yeah, it was rented, and it wasn't big and inviting. We had dreams that I never doubted sooner or later might come true or would come true. But most of all, I knew we had each other. And combined with my kids, that was enough for me. I was happy just trying to make ends meet. At least it was a start. I always thought it could be worse. We could be bankrupt or homeless. In my eyes, I felt like we were okay. After all, a little struggling never hurt anybody. To my husband's dismay, he went back to his old job, and things went pretty much back the way they had been, except for my little surprise. While he had been away, I had been taking in a foreign exchange student. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Like I didn't have enough kids to feed. It was in the paper one day that they needed homes in the area to take in high school foreign exchange students. And not really knowing what possessed me, I took the liberty of calling while he was gone. However, since I hadn't heard from them, I forgot all about it until one day out of the blue in July, they had called me to schedule a meeting. Then I told Phil, and we decided that it might be fun to be parents of a high school kid. Plus, if we got to pick what country, obvious choice would be Germany, because I still remembered most of my German, and we accepted the responsibility in August of 1991. We found ourselves the parents of an East German girl named Alex. Alexandria was her real name. It was very unusual, and although I think I'll never probably do it again, I think it was very insightful, and I really think it was something everyone should do in their life. She was a very good kid, and my kids really accepted her like their big sister. I, on the other hand, felt very old. The times, they are changing. The best thing about the whole experience was teaching her to drive. I really enjoyed it, and it was extremely proud when she got her license. It was in early June of 92 when she left, and although we didn't stay in touch, I'm pretty sure she remembers us like we remember her. My life had started to finally plane out by the end of the summer. Things seemed to be going along as usual. We were just a normal, somewhat average family, living a normal average life. Something could not have been said any wronger. I can honestly say one day things came to an abrupt halt for me, and time seemed to stand still. It was like a nightmare come true, like I'd been sleeping and just woke up to find myself in the twilight zone, like nothing I'd ever experienced before, like someone had sucked all the life out of me. But a nightmare is something you can wake up from, and this was something I couldn't wake up from. I couldn't, I can't tell you. It'll, it'll stun you. But I feel like this is a good stopping point. Um, yeah. It was like one day that literally changed my life. And I kind of want to just leave it here for right now because there's just no words to really tell you what you're going to hear in the next episode, other than to say, I think I said it best when I said a nightmare is something you can wake up from, and this is something I couldn't wake up from. It was like somebody had punched the air out of me. And I am speechless. I just feel like it's hard to go through this next episode without doing it all at once. And I don't want to start it right now because I know my podcast gets a little long for people. But I will tell you that after my son was born, I thought, yeah, we have it tough. We do. We're not rich by no means. We have 4 children. They're all little. We live in a rented house. And we work for every single thing we have. And even my family had tried to help us when money was tight. But I just thought everything was okay. I knew we fought, and I knew he was depressed, and I knew he'd just gotten back from Desert Storm, and I knew life was a struggle. And out of the marriage that I had with Matt, out of the marriage I had with Kyle, out of the marriage I had even with Walker. And here I was with Bill, my 4th husband. I cannot describe to you what it was like getting punched in the gut and having your world turned upside down. But I'm going to try in the next episode, so please continue to listen. Thank you.